All right, there we go. All right, it took a second there. Like, oh my gosh, let's get these spinning wheels going. All right, Facebook groups. Click the start there. We got two going, and we are live. Welcome in, welcome in. It is Tuesday morning, the 7th of November, election day for many places out there. Make sure you get out there and vote. I am Nick Kendell, and joined by, as always, Scott Kennedy. Scott, how you doing? Good morning. Thank you for taking the reins yesterday when we'd had to go longer for the Falcons show because WTF. And then we had to get out of here for doctor stuff. So thank you very much for holding down the fort after I kicked us
Yeah,
off for
happy to
15
help. Want
minutes.
to say a special thanks to Jasmine, who came in after the fact with a big super thanks. We see that, we notice that, and don't think just because it wasn't live, we don't see it. We do, absolutely, and it means a lot to us that you would think of us after the fact like that. So thanks, Jasmine.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And if you're joining us today, wherever you're at, make sure you click a thumbs up on the way in, and we would really appreciate that. We got one on the Facebook side right now, Patrick Wiltsey. Always good to see from Patrick. If you're on YouTube, share it out. Let's get some people in here. Let's get it going. The bye week is over, but we're still kind of in an assessment phase. We will really kick into high gear with that Bills game, especially because it's Monday night game this Thursday. But for now, we're going to talk a little bit of awards, midseason superlatives, et cetera, et cetera. And if you guys have any award categories as well that you think of, this is obviously a very, I would say, the most interactive sports live stream that there exists out there, let alone just in Broncos country. So if you guys have any award categories as well, of course, we will get to you. And let's say hello to some people coming in here right now. We got Dave Glassman in the house with the hearts. Good to see you, Dave. Kevin Gray's in the house saying, morning, Nick and Scott. Big Mile High salute to Broncos country. Good to see you, Kevin. Also, we got our guy, Jeremy Sean, saying, morning, boys. Broncos, he's given a D+, but Broncos for breakfast given an A+. We went and graded the Broncos positional group, Scott, last Thursday, I want to say.
Sounds about right.
I don't know, all the days mushed together at this point, especially once the sun is just, we're in the big dark now out here in Seattle. So
The big dark.
I don't know what day the sun's setting before 5. I mean, it's dark out here. But I'd give the Broncos, I mean, they're 3-5. I don't know if I'd give them a D+, though. I think they're probably a C minus right now. That should be a 500 team, but you beat the Chiefs, right? You get like a double. That's like ace in a final to me. So I'd give them a little bit better grade. Yeah, and then Benjamin Flores, we beat the MFing Chiefs.
I remember though, my grades were a little bit less because it was a midterm grade and we had half of the 3/4 of the season was an F. It was an H. It was an M. It wasn't even up there. It was like one of those 34% Fs. It's like, dude, you're going to have to ace everything just to get a good F out of this. That's where the season started. So if you look at it and say, on the whole, if I just look at everything right now and say 3-5, that's not up to expectations. If I look at the defense on the whole, I say, oh my God, what happened? This is an F, obviously. And then there's some good things. The running game's been pretty good. The offensive line has been meh. Russell Wilson's numbers are his, like I said, if we're just looking at numbers, Russell Wilson's numbers look solid. So, I think a D+ in there, a D is right. But the thing is the trend is going in the right direction. So we are just at the midterms. Now you've got a chance to finish strong and put together a season that I think Broncos country can be proud of. The opportunity is still there instead of, where the paper bags for the old Saints fans. That's where we were week 3 or 4. It's very, very different now, and it's a good feeling.
Yeah, it certainly is trending in the right direction. We'll see how this Broncos team does against a vulnerable Bills team, with the Broncos having extra time to prepare and a Bills team that is in a must-win situation. So should be actually a pretty good game Monday night. I know the spread, I think, is 7.5 to Buffalo. I will pick the Bills to win just because I need to see it multiple times from the Broncos, but I might take the Broncos in the spread there. So we'll see. Bama X in the house saying, good morning, Broncos country. Good to see you, Bama X. Colin, I see your question here. He says, most improved, Nick Benito or Lloyd Cushenberry. That's one of our categories, and we'll get to that at some point. I probably won't do most improved right out the gate, so we'll come back to this one in a second, Colin, but did want to say good morning to you. We got Todd Ostendorf in here saying, how it do, Broncos country. Good to see you, Todd. Gary Palmer's also in the house. Always good to see you, Gary. Pearl Heater, hi. Benjamin Flores. Ben, we see you. I don't know what's going on with the picture there, but we see you, Ben. And Gary Palmer with the $4.99.
Ben is in the Mile High Huddle, the main one today, and not hiding in the Superfans group, which gets locked out. So, Ben, I see you, Ben, in there this morning, along with Patrick, David, Michael. So it's much easier to show up. And Gary's coming on YouTube. He says hello, and then he backs it with a nice green super. So thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good morning to you, Gary. Appreciate you. David Schlosser's in the house too. Hassie Bay come in saying can't wait to watch the Broncos Bills and the Manning cast. That should be fun. I typically like just the normal broadcast view because keeps me focused on what I'm watching. But I'm sure I'll get the best clips of that. Did you see any of the Manning cast clips from yesterday?
I've actually never watched a Manning cast.
Okay, they're fun. It'd be like if you.
No, I like it.
Yeah.
I do, and I think it would be better on. For me, like you just said, I want to watch the game, and
Mhm.
to a certain extent, I don't really listen to the announcers either.
Yeah.
I'd like it on demand, honestly. Like if I already know the outcome of the game, and if I was going to rewatch a game, I'd probably rewatch the Manning cast. But
Yeah.
no, I think they're great. This isn't I'm making fun of the not listening to these national pundits who do not know what they're talking about, but say it really loudly so they sound like authorities. No, I think they're great. I just by the time we get done with the podcasts on Monday nights and everything, the game's halftime already in, and I'm just kind of picking up to see who wins the games.
Yeah. Yeah. They're always fun. They had some good clips this week where they're asking Peyton Manning to do some like signals on the sideline, and Eli was just running through things, and it was a good time. Peyton's God, he's just a funny dude. We got Patrick in here saying aloha, gents. Always great to see you, Patrick. I opened up a new bag today, and my God, it is heavenly. So that's Lion Coffee Company, folks. Chase Wellner in the house. Always good to see you. David also says that he would love to see the Broncos beat the Bills since he's in Bills country. Can shut up the Bills fans. That would be great. We'd really appreciate that. Unfortunately, Denver doesn't play Seattle for a bit, and the Russell Wilson trade ramifications run a little bit longer than the game itself. So going to be a bit for where I'm living to shut up Seahawks fans, but I'm glad that hopefully we can give you some Bills fans shutting their trap. I think they're probably a little bit nervous, so maybe they're not talking too much smack right now. Shane comes in, says, morning, Broncos country, been a while. One quick question. Isn't Kayvon Webster coming back off of an injury? I'm not sure. Kayvon Webster isn't sticking out to me in my head. Is that a Bills player here, Scott? Did you look up the name?
I had to look him up, and he was Denver Broncos in the third round of the 2013 draft.
Is he from South Florida?
Yeah, and he hasn't been in the league in almost 4 years now. So we might be thinking of somebody else, Shane, because it has been a while. Where have you been, man? He's just waking up from a 4-year coma. Kayvon's back, baby. No, Shane. I'm not sure who you're. Riley Moss is one of those guys, the corners you could be thinking of. There's have been some injuries. The Kawon Williams is someone you may have been thinking about, and I think he's done for the season. I don't think he gets to come back.
I bet you that's who he's thinking of. Kawon Williams is done for the year. He's shut down.
Yeah, so that might be who you're thinking of. But there's nobody that we're really expecting to come back from injury. Broncos are, knock on wood, relatively healthy, especially compared to years past.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been we've said it many times on here, Scott. 1 year, the injury luck would just based on probability. It's every single year it's different. I know it's a gambler's fallacy if you want to get, really technical with it, but like you can't be bottom 10 in injury luck every single year forever when you're re-rolling the dice every time. Now it's not a complete roll of dice because you brought in some guys that you knew about injury history, so that sometimes that tends to lead into it. But so far the Broncos have been relatively healthy compared to much of their peers. And you're right, Scott. The injury report, we'll find out Thursday. I believe it'll come out, not Wednesday.
They do
Thursday.
The first one on Wednesdays, but those are generally walkthroughs, so you don't find. And then when they go full go on Thursday, because the one that I always love is the walkthroughs on Wednesday. It's like, oh, he was a full participant. Great. It was a walkthrough.
Yeah. And would it even get pushed? I think they are pushing it back a day because the Monday night.
Yep.
So I think we might not even get until Thursday.
So Thursday could be, you might be right. It might be not day of the week, but it could be days until your next game. I'm not sure how that works exactly. I haven't paid that close attention.
I thought I heard that Peyton gave him an extra day off with that thing, full week. So I don't know. We'll see. Soon enough, we'll see what the injury report looks like. Hopefully nobody cropped up from doing something silly over the bye week, which NFL teams
working out on your own. That's very perilous in Denver.
Yeah, that can be dangerous. Fall in the tub. We've all been there. Michael Ronquillo in the house, and good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast with the super chat. Great to see you, Michael. We really appreciate you coming and supporting the show. Keith's in the house. Good morning to you, Keith. Good morning, Nick and Scott, who I'm surprised still has a voice. I'll do some heavy lifting today on the talking. That's been I'm all stretched and ready to go.
Larry Archer. And then I was screaming at the television for about 90 minutes yesterday watching Chelsea and Spurs. So I got in. I found I did still have some passion. Chelsea's been so bad lately. I've been sitting there watching the games like Vic Fangio. But this one I was animated. That was animated. I know Kevin's in here. He probably watched that one. You're welcome, Kevin. He's a City fan, still top of the table.
There you go.
Anyway, enough soccer. Let's move on.
We got Larry Archer said, "Good morning. Go Broncos. Beat the Bills. Last 3 weeks been a C plus, B minus. I mean, yeah, B plus, or maybe even a straight up B. I mean, you played tough on a short week at Arrowhead, and that was a one. I mean, you were pretty much out of that one because the offense was so lifeless. But it was a 1 possession game, I think, at the end. So it'd be pretty hard to rate them any lower than a B, B plus over the last 3 games. Now that's 3 out of 8. So you are what your record says you are. But we'll see how it plays out here the rest of the season. There's belief. Pearl Heater, what is your grade for the team playing as a whole, not just the part? Kind of went over it, Pearl, but yeah, B, probably a B, C plus to B range right now. I'd give them, and maybe I'm just being super optimistic, but I'm grading them as the season progresses. You know, it's like the teacher at the end of the year, like, well, he was a B, but because he was so much better the last 2 weeks, the last 3 weeks, we're gonna bump that up to a B plus.
I had a chemistry teacher give me an 89 after I got a 105 on the final. I'm like, man, come on.
Yeah, that.
I obviously learned. I aced the damn final.
Yeah.
How about the 90? How about the
Mhm.
A? Thank you. And that was mad because that was my only A, my only B that semester. Then I realized how easy it was to skip class in college and never made those kind of grades again.
Yeah, sometimes I learned as much from the textbook, but that's all good. Brad coming in here, especially I got Khan Academy YouTube stuff. That's always helpful too. Brad, $10 says Russ has to stop the fumbles. Better than Lamar's 8 but on the season, but still, well, you're totally right, Brad. That's probably my biggest frustration with Russell Wilson right now has been the strip sacks from within the pocket. And while he does have a lower number than Lamar Jackson at 8, the value that Lamar brings as a rusher in comparison to literally every other quarterback in the league is different. So I think you live with it a tad with Lamar. I'd be curious what the EPA is added for each player in rush attempts. But yeah, I mean, Lamar's in his own category, even because he's just going to take on a little bit more risk, but you're going to get much more explosive. So Russ has been good scrambling this year. I would imagine his yardage is probably in the top 8 for quarterbacks. But yeah, he does have to protect the ball better. You're not an explosive enough offense where you can live with turnovers. You're playing very fine margin football.
He's tied for 9th in the NFL, which
In rushing yards?
yeah, I've got that wrong. How does Joshua Dobbs? He played with I was like, how does he have that many fumbles? Josh Dobbs has a bunch. Lamar Jackson has 10. Tua has 8. Zach Wilson with 8. Kirk Cousins with 7. Desmond Ridder with 7. Brock Purdy and Trevor Lawrence each have 6, and then Gardner Minshew and Russell Wilson both have 5. And then there's a whole bunch at 4, but it's not, he hasn't fumbled a ton. He really hasn't. But like Nick's saying, it seems like they're coming in the worst times.
Mm-hmm.
They're game killers when they're happening. I won't even say drive killers because it seems like they've happened and either led directly to 7 points or cost you the game that you were driving for the tying or go ahead score. So they've been exacerbated, but overall there really haven't been that many. They've just hurt. They have hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the big thing also is not to make this not Wilson's fault, but you'd like the defense to, maybe just flex a little bit when something like that happens. Why don't you take the ball away? Why don't you get a 3 and out? It feels like almost every single time there's been one of those turnovers, it's been automatic points on the other side.
They haven't. That was where it started. I think it may have started, and I don't remember. I'm getting old and can't remember all these things. But I feel like in the Kansas City game, that's when they really started turning a quarter with the red zone. The Chiefs went up and down the field, but then the red zone defense would pick up, or they would pick up the team after a turnover and hold them to a field goal, or maybe even possibly a punt. So complementary football, I think the defense, that is one of the things that is most improved, is the defense has been able to pick up the offense in times like that. So,
yeah.
But yeah, Brad, it's the ones where, Brad, it feels like he should know better. It's like if you're in the pocket and you're going back to pass and your arm gets hit, okay, that's not your fault. But when I'm flushed out to the left and carrying the ball down, he's trying to make a play a lot of times, so he still has the ball in sort of a throwing position. He hasn't tucked it away. But when you're scrambling out and being chased by an edge rusher who's running 4.5s, you gotta get rid of the ball. You've got to get rid of the ball. You've got to get out of bounds. You've got to do something. So, Brad, I agree. there's the ones that he has have feel like they could have been avoided. Like those are on him, and maybe that's it, Nick.
Hmm.
The fumbles that he's had feel like they are on Russ and not just the 5 fumbles. There's 5 fumbles that he could have avoided, as opposed to a blindside hit where the ball pops out or he gets his arm hit or something like that. It's been, like you said, strip sack fumbles as he's trying to avoid pressure when he could have gotten the ball away.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's enough of them at some point we could go back and, analyze each one, but I can think of, like, just this last Kansas City game 1, Broncos very much in control and living with a punt at that point, given how your defense is playing, given the lack of explosives from Kansas City, would have been okay. You have a strip sack there, and then Kansas City gets on the board with, only 2 minutes left in the first half. I mean, those are the margins that you're talking about in a game. It's like, you cannot just give up points like that when you're controlling. It's, not to kick you while you're down, Scott, but like the Falcons game, giving up 2 touchdowns in the last 2 minutes of each half. It's like, that's when you really need to be controlling the game.
You know how we like to use other sports as comparisons. It's almost like 2 elite tennis players and you get a service break. There could be 12 games that you got to win in the set, but a service break ends up being the difference maker. And something like that, you said the margins are so fine that you can't be giving away points at the end of a half when a 0 would have looked very, very good.
Yep. Punting is not always the worst option. Turnovers are killers. Troy Boer coming in here, $9.99, says, "Hey guys, so many lost opportunities. The Las Vegas Raiders, Washington Commanders, New York Jets. Even one of those makes us 4-4. Award to whoever is responsible for keeping morale up and keeping the players playing hard despite the chatter." Yeah, we'll get through some of those awards here soon. I want to get through the chat, but you're totally right. I've been going through some of those games in my head. I mean, that Vegas one really looks horrible in hindsight. I mean, the Broncos could easily be 5-3 right now, but that's something, we talked about a lot this offseason, and Scott and I've talked about it a lot in here. The NFL the margins are pretty small. There's a very large middle class in the league, and I think the Broncos probably make up somewhere in that middle class because, I mean, you're right. A few of those games could have easily bounced the other way. Some bad turnover luck the first 2 weeks where it seemed like the ball was on the turf, but Denver never landed on it in those situations. And you could be talking about a team that's 4-4 or 5-3. Again, you are what your record says you are, but this is a team that's, within that 500 margin. So I think we're going to see a team that ends up about there as the season goes along.
Appreciate it, Troy. And
Yeah,
as
thanks,
I'm
Troy.
watching this and talking about the 4-4 teams, etc., it's the goal of the NFL is to get everybody 500, and they don't do that by making bad teams much better.
Mm-hmm.
They do it by making the good teams come down. And I swear, there's some really, really bad football teams that are within a game of 500 on either side of it. We watched 2 of them in Atlanta last week. 4-5 Atlanta against 5-4 Minnesota. That was an awful football game. I mean, it was exciting, but it was just bad football. So yes, step up, take advantage of those, even one of those, and then because the Denver Broncos are playing better. And you said award goes to whoever responsible for keeping the morale up and keeping the players playing hard despite the chatter. And I think a lot of that goes to Sean Payton. The calm. I've been there before. I've done this before. And I said, really at the time where I saw it was in the game against the Bears. In the game against the Bears, when sometimes I get the Bears and the Commanders game confused. The Bears jumped out in the big lead and the Broncos came back. And after that game against the Dolphins, it would have been real easy just to curl up in a ball and quit. And they didn't. And at the time I said, I don't know how the season's going to play out, but as a fan, I will root for my team as long as they're still fighting for out there. I've said, if you don't care, why should I? I'll be a fan next year. 75% of you turkeys are going to be gone. I'll start over with someone who wants to be Denver Broncos. This is a team that you can back. This is a team that has kept fighting. They may have quit against Miami Dolphins, but that was a TKO. They throw in the towel. Week to week, this team is still fighting. And that's a team you can root for and be proud of. And it's starting to pay dividends as the team is now starting to head in the right direction, Troy.
They definitely feel like they're heading in the right direction. We will see what it looks like over these next few weeks. I got some feisty opponents coming up, but I think the second half is not as daunting as it appeared to be originally. The Chargers have not been as great as many had thought, or at least they looked pretty good last night. But
the Chargers and Raiders both played a hell of a lot better than they've been playing.
Yeah, but I think probably still not as daunting as it could have been. The Bills for sure, not as daunting. The Vikings, not as daunting. I mean, you have winnable games
Mhm.
coming up here if you are in that, NFL middle class, which seems like the Broncos are in there. So we'll see what
Nick,
happens.
here's the way it goes though. It's for what goes up must come down. So you go, okay, Bills down, Vikings down, Browns even, Texans up, Chargers maybe down, Lions up, Patriots down, Chargers, even
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
And then Raiders, I think they're up from where you played them earlier. So it all kind of balances out. The
Yeah.
Texans are definitely going to be a tougher game than you were thinking of when you put the
Yes.
schedule out the first time.
I mean, they could be feisty. We'll see what happens with the Texans. CJ Stroud had one of the best games we'll see the entire season from a player. So playing great. Definitely might have already sewed up rookie of the year. Ryan Thompson coming in. Good morning, Broncos country. Ernie Mays says, "Go Broncos country only." Appreciate you. Hope you're doing well. We got Dominique in the house, and good morning, Nick and Scott. Denver Broncos for life. Guys, is it possible Broncos can go 7-2 in these last 9 games? Anything's possible. If the Broncos, win the turnover battle by +4 and go, what was it, 3 for 4 in the red zone and all that stuff, and good special teams and all that stuff, they can win some football games. I think it's probably much more likely they are, probably 500 down the stretch here than anything else. But 7-2 is possible, and 7-2 might get you in the dance, which was the ultimate goal this season.
For me, I think the two hardest games right now are at Bills and at Lions. Everything else is winnable, but the problem is everything else is also losable, which is where, the Broncos aren't quite there yet. So
Mhm.
you go 0-2 on those. You have 7 games left, and then split the rest 4-3. You're talking 4-5, maybe get a plus on that side. 5-4 put you at 8-9 on the season. I think that's where we are, possibly is
Mhm.
where this team is. Go beat the Bills, and we'll have a different discussion. Go beat
Yep.
the Bills, and we'll start talking six and
What's
two on the way home.
yeah, what's
Very, very
possible then?
possible.
Yeah, if they beat the Bills, then we'll talk. And I mean, I'm already a believer in competent football down the
Mhm.
stretch here and being in it. We're out of the realm of the Caleb Williams,
Yeah.
Drake May without a massive trade up, which I don't know if I would be in favor of, given the Broncos' current set of draft picks and salary cap space. But yeah, they beat the Bills, and we're gonna have a completely different conversation about this team going forward. Good to see you, Dominique. We also got Lance in the house and top of the morning, fellas. Always a great way to start the day with MHH. Always a great day to have you join us, Lance. We appreciate you coming in. And he also says that the most improved vote goes to the offensive line and their coach. Well, you're stealing my thunder a little bit there, Lance, about a potential coach of the year for one of these awards. But yeah, no, the Broncos offensive line has definitely been improved. I know that some of the feeling. I mean, Scott, we'll have this conversation probably every year until the end of time. Fans, I think, are harder on the offensive line because there's only probably 3 fan bases in the entire NFL that look at the offensive line and be like, yeah, we're good. I actually like our offensive line. There's just not enough talent out there. Defenses are really smart with understanding protection rules right now and sending specific types of fronts and dropping guys and sending guys to make sure that they're getting a free rusher based on what your protection rules are. So it's pretty hard in the NFL right now. And also, I mean, we'll just, say it. Russell Wilson makes the job of the offensive line a lot harder because he is shorter. So he doesn't always get the ball out in time. And he looks to hold on to the ball and try to create plays, which we knew that when we got Russell Wilson. I'm not saying that Russell Wilson is a bad quarterback because of that, but it just makes the offensive line look worse when he plays that way.
The New York Giants have allowed 49 sacks in 9 games. My God.
They're not good.
So
They are
when
not
I
good.
read this, Lance, I wanted to flash this. I like this comment. Now, I don't know that I agree with this. Okay. If I told you in the offseason I was going to dump, roughly $25 million into the offensive line, would you expect them to be playing better than they are? I do. I
I
think
don't because
for the resources that have been put into this offensive line, I don't think they are playing well enough. I think they're on the way up, though. So I think they're still getting there. It's a unit. You've talked about this a lot. It's a unit, and I think they're getting there. But Mike McGlinchey has been a disappointment. Ben Powers has been a disappointment. Garrett Bowles has been solid. Quinn Miners has been great, and Cushenberry is on the way up. So the 3 guys that have been there, I think, have improved over last year. So that goes to Lance's point. However, they've had the same coach for the same other 2 guys for the same amount of time. And I think McGlinchey and Powers, for what you have spent, been a little disappointing on the O-line this year.
I think they've been a little disappointing. I think Powers looked much rougher earlier on, and has been better down the stretch here. You are paying much more for just, solid play, but that's the market. If you're paying guys that reach the market at this point, typically they're not true difference makers, unfortunately. So the big one where I get the offensive line is that just look at the differences we've seen from the guys who were here last year compared to this year. Now, maybe that's more of a push thumbs down on last year's offensive line coach, but like Cushionberry looks like a completely different player. I think Bowles looks a lot better than we've seen since Munchak was here during
Let's
the.
compare those guys to 2 years ago then, because last year was a shite show, as we know.
I think Bowles is playing as good a football as we've ever seen from him. Cushionberry is
I agree.
definitely playing better football
I
than we've
agree.
ever seen from him, and I think Miners has taken steps forward too, specifically, which
I
all to
agree.
me points to the offensive line coach and the unit they're doing. Now, one thing again, I've said it on here a few times, and I'll knock on wood, the Broncos are in a weird luck situation because they are starting the exact same five that was on your preseason depth chart as you are playing now. And let me tell you, folks, that just does not happen. And we talked about there's not enough good offensive linemen. Well, when the offensive lines look really bad when you have to start to get to the backups. And we have not seen that from Denver this season. So is their offensive line really, really that good? Or is it they're seeing a little bit of luck and, they don't have that one guy who's barely rosterable taking a lot of snaps because of injuries? I mean, it is what it is, I guess. But that's something that you can't talk about how the offensive line has looked better without talking about a little bit of the injury luck that they've had as well. But I think they've been a lot better, Scott, specifically when they've leaned into the run game. That's what they're built for. They shouldn't have been throwing around 50 times, 40 times like they were early in the season. They're a run-based unit, and they looked much better down the stretch here.
Yeah, I agree. I do. But I still expect more. And I think we're getting more. I don't think we've seen the best of this offensive line. That's good. That's a good thing. I expect more from this group. The resources have been put into it, the pedigrees. I expect more. And so should you, and so do they.
Yep. Yeah, they've I think they're trending in the right direction, which is good feeling about an offensive line for sure as we get into the colder weather months. Gatorade Gaming's in the house. Good morning, Nick and Scott. What's good, Broncos country? Also great to see you there. And Scott, let's start to get into some of these awards here. I think we should probably I wrote them down on my phone here. Probably should work our way down to MVP at the end, unless you'd rather start with MVP and just work our way through.
No, I'm coming in cold on this, so it's going to be I haven't seen these, so these are going to be gut reactions for me, Nick.
Well, let's just get into it. Our coach of the year to start. I think that right now I'd probably lean Zach Strife from Street for Strife. I should know that, but the longtime offensive lineman for the Saints, first-time offensive line coach, and that was a bold hire by Sean Payton. Everybody talked about the intelligence, and eventually he'd be a coach at some point. But for a rookie offensive line coach, I've been really, really impressed with what he's done so far this season. The guys who were here last year were just seeing monumental steps forward, and it looks like they are starting to come together. So I'm going to go Zach Strife. Honorable mention for me to Mike Westhoff. I know he's not the actual special teams coach, but sounds like he's the man in charge of the special teams. The reason the other guy has the title is so they could bring him over from Minnesota. Ben Cotliff or whatever, I can't remember the name. So I did want to give a shout out also to Westhoff because the special team's been that much better. But your third most important coach on any team, Scott, is your offensive line coach. And he's been a pretty good hire, in my opinion, so far this season.
I'll try not to back you up on this one. As far as like just repeating, unless it's completely obvious. How about Ben Kotwicka, special teams?
Yes,
is a good shout. And frankly, I can't remember the guy's name that came in from LSU that was with the Saints, but Dan Dalrymple is also the strength and conditioning coach. So if I'm talking coaching, I'm going to go injuries on this, and I'm going to go with the strength and conditioning coach. And Dan Dalrymple has been one of the coaches of the year for the Denver Broncos. Now, there were some injuries, but it seemed like the injuries that happened early were players who were previously injured. It's like, oh, well, this guy got hurt. I guess it's not all on, and I'm already forgetting guys' names. The guy that left last year. Well, that was the same guy. That was Tim Patrick getting hurt again. That was KJ Hamler getting hurt again. That was Greg Dulcich with a hamstring again. The same. Those were recurring. But you mentioned we look at the defensive line. We look at the offensive line. Those guys have been in there, knock on wood, healthy to an extent that we never saw in the 3 years I've been covering this team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I did also want to give a shout out to Michael Wilhoit, outside linebackers coach, considering, you had Frank Clark and Randy Gregory, and that was not working. So you're relying on 7th round pick, rookie contract, Jonathan Cooper, the steps we've seen from Nick Benito, getting Baron Browning ready. I mean, even like Ronnie Perkins, who you brought in midseason, is now playing a viable role in this defense as an outside linebacker. So I think Wilhoit on the defensive side deserves a shout out as well. And defense is trending in the right direction. It seems like overall. We'll see what happens against this very talented Bills team, Scott. Now let's keep it going here. We talked Coach of the Year. How about our Rookie of the Year? I think this is probably the easiest one because A, you don't have a lot of guys to choose from, and B, there's just one who seemed to have more of an impact than the others. There's 2 names, but I think one
There's
stands
two. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
two. My immediate thought was Marvin Mims, and then as I had a second to think about it just a little longer, I went Jaleel McLaughlin.
Yep.
So I'll say Jaleel McLaughlin for Rookie of the Year. So far, I think he's had a chance to make more of an impact, and getting a few more touches. Maybe I just like the underdog as an undrafted free agent, and I'm going to root for him a little bit harder. But for me, those are the two that spring to mind. And Marvin Mims was my gut reaction. My aftermath was I'm going Jaleel McLaughlin running back.
Yeah, and Gatorade Gaming also said the linebackers coach, and I'm stealing his thunder. That was a good point. I was already heading that way, but it was a good point for sure. We appreciate you. We got Tyler Brooks coming in saying, "Hey, Nick and Scott, I think we were overhyping the Bills. You shut down Allen. It's a wrap. Running backs in the DM. Buffalo is shot. Denver 27, Buffalo 21. Buffalo's going to be desperate, and Josh Allen at his peak is good as any quarterback in football. If he goes nuclear, look out. The issue with the Bills is that they're almost like completely reliant on Josh Allen right now. They've abandoned the running game, which Josh Allen's taking hits right now. You can get after him a little bit, and their defense has been one of the worst in football over the last few weeks. So, I mean, Denver's got a chance in this one. We'll see how it plays out, though.
And Tyler, I agree. I said as much last night on the Mile High Huddle podcast. Was I think part of what we're doing is romanticizing who we think the Bills can be, who they should be, rather than who they are. And who they are as a team that's lost 2 out of 3, including to the woeful New England Patriots. However, at home, win Raiders, win Dolphins, win Giants, win Buccaneers. So I think they're 4-0 at home, possibly. I may have missed a game, but I think they're going to be tough to handle at home. We've got in, and we'll get into it more. But your overall point, I agree with, and I admitted as much, that we're thinking about who they should be and who they can be rather than who they are, which is a very beatable team right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I am 100% with you on that. They're beatable, and we can get a lot more into the data and the numbers, but the Bills, they pretty much live in nickel personnel on defense, no matter what. Their numbers are insane. They're just going to trot out a 4-2-5 defense. Can the Broncos run on that from 12 and 21 personnel? That's going to be a big tell for if the Broncos can win this game. The Bills have been terrible after Matt Milano's gone down defensively, so hopefully they can take advantage of that and win the turnover battle. Josh Allen's good for 2 to 3 WTF, put the ball in harm's way, plays a game. You need to not muff those. You need to not, alligator arms. Well, that could have been an interception. No, absolutely not. And also protect the football at the same time. So it'll be a great game. I'm really excited. And who'd have thought we'd be looking forward to I'm nervous to even say this because, the universe will smack us down. But I'm looking forward to Broncos on primetime versus a premier opponent, which last few years has not been the case.
They're 4-1 at home. They lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars at home in a tight one.
Yep. Yeah, that's it. It'll be tough, without a doubt. Luckily, run games travel, so we'll see. My Rookie of the Year, Scott, as well. I'm going to go with Jaleel McLaughlin. I know that people want a lot more touches for him in the offense. What did he get last week? 4 touches, and every time he gets the ball, it just feels like it's different. I would say, this isn't Madden as well, so because he is so diminutive, when you are with him, you lose a schematic advantage because you are not keeping him in to pass protect. So teams will line up a certain way and get rushers where either this guy's going to be free or he's against the running back, and that's a big advantage for the pass rush to do that. Also, you can get the ball to him in swing passes and you can do some things, but he's not really like a flex out wide receiver right now that you can see from that. Maybe that's something that we can get to in the future with him, get to some empty sets with him flexing out. And if you get him with a linebacker in space, then good luck. But right now he's a little bit of a limited player because of what he causes you to do on offense. But he's been explosive. He's been awesome. Do you think there's a chance that we could have it be Marvin Mims when we to have this conversation again at the end of the season? What does that look like? I know that Peyton had,
Absolutely, I do.
yeah.
And, I think Sean Payton's probably tired of the question. And because I think he made a joke about it. Like, I've got it on my
Mhm.
notebook right here, y'all, how to get Marvin Mims more touches, because he gets asked basically every week.
Yeah.
Because every time
Yep.
Marvin Mims touches the ball, he's like, why isn't this guy getting the ball more? So, yes, I think by the end of the season, we could absolutely, especially as Javonte Williams is getting healthier and healthier and looking better and better, that's going to eat into McLaughlin's touches. And Mims' touches should go up. They should go up. I'd like to see more 3 wide receiver sets where he's involved. And you might have to change things the way change around a little bit how you want to play, knowing that you have a tight end out there all the time, and you're playing in a lot of 2 tight end sets. Richard is going off here. Love it. I love the attitude, Richard. He says about yesterday and winning out. Whoever wants to win a Super Bowl has to win in the playoffs. And in order to do so, it helps, if you've got home field advantage. If we go 12-5, do we win the West and the number 1 seed?
I guess it's possible, but I can't imagine many 12-5, 12-4 teams getting the 1 seeds and tiebreakers. Typically, you're talking, 2 or 3 loss teams there. So anything can happen. We still have half the season to go, and we talked about the NFL has a large middle class, so maybe you don't have as much extremes on the edges. But I'm having a hard time seeing the Ravens fall to 12-5, and unfortunately, because of a lot of who the Broncos have beaten in their schedule. Now, granted, if they win out, the tiebreakers will change, but 2 of your 3 wins against the NFC. And when you have a lot of tiebreakers going on, a lot of times it's those conference games come into matter a little bit more. So I would imagine it's pretty hard for the Broncos to get the 1 seed. Winning the West, if you finish 12-5, you're going to have a chance because while the Chiefs defense looks great, I think they probably end up with, 4 or 5 losses as well. Things could change there.
Your division leaders have 2 losses, 2 losses, 2 losses, 3 losses. So again, I don't think you have the Chiefs, Ravens, and Jaguars all losing. They'd all have to have losing records at the back end of the season in order to be, or at least 5-4, at the worst. And I don't see that happening. So the problem, Richard, and this is the problem overall, is you dug yourself in such a hole. Even if you start playing really well, you're still in 15th place out of 16 teams right now. And it's not just what you do, it's what everybody else does. So I've got to climb over all those teams. And they've got guys on pods talking the same conversations we have. Cincinnati Bengals are hot right now.
They are hot.
They're hot. They're talking about winning out. So you've got the Buffalo Bills are talking about, okay, we can get this right. The Houston Texans are pretty excited. Oh my God, look at our schedule. We're in the AFC South and we play the NFC South. We're 4-4 right now. We can go on a run. So, Las Vegas Raiders, it's all those other teams. So, the odds of going, winning out are slim anyway.
Yeah.
But the odds that everything else is going to fall in line, that you could end up with the league's best record at 12-5, is just about 0.
Yeah. And Richard says we'd win the tiebreaker against the Chiefs. You're 1-1 against the Chiefs. You split this year. I don't know. I think that would probably kick down to the next tiebreaker if head-to-head was involved, because you're tied.
Which would be division record, which right now is against you because the Chiefs only division losses to the Broncos.
Yep. So it's probably not happening, but God, just get into the darn playoffs. How about let's just beat the Bills and then let's
Wouldn't
talk.
it be fun to have that conversation? Hey, it's 11-6. Let's start talking playoff seeds.
God.
Okay. I'm in.
Yeah. Let's just beat the Bills. That'd be great. Continuing, I would go with Jaleel McLaughlin here, as I mentioned. I'm curious, Scott, do you think that because of the splash plays and the draft pedigree and whatnot, that a collective are maybe overrating Mims a little bit? We see the stuff, but I mean, he's fumbled the ball a lot when he's been out there, and he does seem limited in what they are asking him to do. I mean, is it just a situation where, his body type and his everything means he's a year off or so? I mean, what's going on?
No, we're not overrating. And if we're talking about this should be the number 1 receiver and a Pro Bowler, then yes. So I always ask that question. Where are you rating him? He's overrated. Okay, what are you rating him, Nick? I'm rating him as he should be wide receiver 3. I don't think that's overrating him. wide receiver sheet 3 should get between 500 and 600 yards. He's
Yeah.
on pace for that if he would start getting the ball again. So, 40 catches, 600, 700 yards, that's not out of the question. And I don't think saying that he could be wide receiver 3 on this team is overrating him. I think that's where he should be. So no. Now, if I'm saying he should be a rookie of the year candidate and he should be a Pro Bowl receiver and he's the future of this franchise, yes, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Can he be a more dynamic weapon for this team? Yes, he can.
Yeah, you'd hope so. Seems like he's been a little bit in the doghouse. Also, the Broncos have maybe started to go to a little bit of a different personnel grouping. We've started to see heavy from them the last few weeks. I think we've seen 17 or 18 snaps offensively, which cuts into that 11 personnel with that 6 offensive linemen out there. So we'll be interesting to see. And also, you're coming off the bye week here. What are the new wrinkles and just points of emphasis on this offense? So far this season, the Broncos actually have been more explosive and a better EPA out of 11 personnel. I think a lot of that actually is because the explosives that you have from Marvin Mims early in the season. But recently down the stretch, Broncos have been playing more heavy personnel, 12, 21, 6 offensive linemen even. And just curious because that to me would say probably less Mims involvement still. You have packages out there, no doubt. Sean Payton's very game by game, matchup by matchup, but just wonder what the rest of the season looks like for Mims.
What you can't do is design a play for him and then put him in and use it. It's like, oh, that guy's in. Here comes the reverse.
Yeah.
That type of thing. So he's got to be part of the offense. And if he's wide receiver 3, the problem is the question I ask is, as much as this team wants to run the ball and as the offensive line improves, I shouldn't have to rely on my wide receivers as much. But if I've got 3 wide receivers out there and 2 of them are Mims and Judy, I've got a little bit of a problem blocking on the perimeter.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of it. Right now, Mims is too much alike Judy, and I can afford to have one guy like that out there. But if I have two guys out there who are minus blockers, then it's gonna affect my ability to run the ball. But I still think Mims should be more involved and get more touches than he's been getting, which is almost none. And I don't think that's overrating him. I think that's, hey, let's get him the ball. He's pretty dynamic.
Yeah. And maybe we'll feel a little bit better about this Broncos team going forward because, we all kind of saw what the Chiefs just did to the Dolphins. Now, granted, weird game, early time slot, Frankfurt, Germany. But Denver looked, okay against Kansas City. But then the Miami Dolphins team that put up 70 and could have put up more versus Denver. Again, not the same team right now. But they looked not hapless against the Chiefs, but they were befuddled. What were they down 21-0 in the first half of the game? It was Chiefs had answers for the Dolphins, and the Broncos had answers for the Chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what they look like now that we're getting different sample size or different teams rather than 2 of your last 3 games being against Chiefs, who maybe have one of the top 3 defenses in football this season.
Lou comes in. He says, I'm dubious about all the talk about winning out. You don't say. If this was a Chiefs podcast, if this was a Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, if this was a Baltimore Ravens podcast, I would be dubious about winning out. Yeah. This is 3-5 Denver Broncos. They're playing better, but again, let's pump the brakes. I don't think anyone is seriously talking about winning out. I really don't. We can have the conversations. Hey, this would be fun if, but nobody is realistically in here talking about going 9-0 to finish. Come on, man. No. But he says, but here's where it starts to get more realistic. I'm just relieved that we're relevant again. And in the conversation on Sunday, absolutely. If we do beat the Bills, then the belief will really start to grow. And again, if you do beat the Bills, I'm still not talking an 8-0 run, but I'm absolutely talking about playoffs. Absolutely. Yeah. If you beat the Bills, otherwise you're 3-6 with 8 games to go and you've dug yourself too big a hole. Even if you are one of the 8 best teams playing going down the stretch, the hole you dug in the first month of the season is just too deep.
Yeah, without a doubt. But you beat the Bills, we'll have a totally different conversation. It'll be very fun. Even if they lose, season's not over, right? But if you beat the Bills, we're feisty. Scott, let's move on here.
Real quick question, and then I'll hand it back over to you. Clutchmaster says, "Is Mims what we wanted Washington to be?" No. Montreal Washington was drafted to be a return specialist only. Gadget. If he got on the field at all, it was just gravy. Or something else has gone wrong. Mims was drafted to be a wide receiver that can help return punts.
Yeah.
But when you trade up and you take a guy as high as you took Mims, you need him on the field. You want him on the field. You're not taking a return guy as high as you did. And you're not trading up for him. You take a return specialist on day 3. Mims is being counted on long term to be a big part of this offense. Whether he's ready or not, that's up to the coaches. But the draft process for him was to make him part of your receiver rotation in the very near future.
Yeah. And with how hard it is to get explosive plays in today's NFL right now, with how defenses are playing, I mean, we have just an unbelievable lull in explosive plays so far through the NFL this season. Scott, I've sent you that podcast where they talked about it. What was the number? Like the average rate compared to this year, we've had like 100 and something less explosives this season. Defenses are playing really good football. Points are down, passing yards are down.
Penalties are probably up, which is why bother. The explosive plays will take care of themselves. We'll just wait for them to get in 1st and 20.
Yeah, that's possible. The EPA per pass is down. Points are down. All the rushing data is the same, which is kind of odd in the league. Considering
It'll never happen the same way it's never happened for basketball. The field's too small for these guys. I would love to see them go to a Canadian football size field. I mean, a 10-foot rim's been around for 100 years, and there's guys that can reach up and touch the rim. You know, there's that can dunk flat-footed. The 55-yard, 100-yard field for an Adafa Owe, who's 6'6", 260 pounds, running a 4.3, the field's gotten too small. But again, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see a little more space out there.
Yeah, or we can just get into sprint football, right? The body fat composition. Have you seen any of this stuff with the service academies? Okay, it's kind of wild. Offensive player of the year, Scott. For me, I am going to go with Cortland Sutton. He's been the go-to guy for this offense. I mean, what does he have? 6 touchdowns on the year. The fact that the Broncos are passing the ball as well in the 2 score touchdowns has been big. And Sutton's had some pretty big games out there. And you talk about the penalties as well. That's also a part of the Cortland Sutton experience, is drawing pass interferences down the field. So for me, offensive player of the year, I'm going to go with Cortland Sutton. Debated a few other folks as well. This is a harder category, but Sutton's been good. I'm going to have to give him the nod. He's a good player.
Yeah, it's tough. Just because the ball has been spread out so much, you know, again, you asked the question earlier, about Mims, if we go down the line, could this be a different answer? You know, I look at the rushing yards, 357 for Williams, 268 for McLaughlin. Russell Wilson has 200. You look at receiving yards, and Cortland Sutton's leading with 380 and 6 touchdowns. There you go. That's pretty solid. So I like your pick. I'll go just in a different direction. Just so we're not doubling up, and I want to shout somebody else out, but on offense, I'll go. How about Will Lutz? That's special teams. Point scoring. I'll go Quinn Miners. I think Quinn Miners has been the most dependable, best overall, and just the heart and soul of what Sean Payton wants to do is Quinn Miners. He wants to bully people. He wants to beat them up, and then he wants to take his shots. So I love the Sutton pick. And I'll go in a different direction and say Quinn Miners for offensive MVP, anchor of an improved offensive line.
He's definitely brings a mentality. I don't know if you had a chance to go back and watch that Chiefs game again, focusing on the offensive line, but he's one that if you have kids playing offensive line, or you're coaching high school level,
if you have kids playing defensive line, put a golf club in their hands.
Yeah. But if you have, if you're interested in what mentality looks like for a run team, watch Quinn Miners, because he was following every play. There was one where he got tripped and then ran across the field another 10 yards and pushed the pile. It would have been easy just to lay on the ground on that one. Play is pretty much dead. Now he gets up and runs it down. Those are body blows that add up over time, and that's pushing your will on the opposition. So I mean, that's the mentality comes there. Really great to see. Defensive player of the year now. He's been a bit up and down this year for me, Scott, but he's still one of the best players in all of football. And the defensive structure runs because you have this player out there, and that's Patrick Surtain, your most valuable player. He's been pretty good this season. Teams aren't really throwing at him so much. I think part of that is you'd like a little bit better pressure rate to get teams to throw some gimme balls. Also, you wish you had a little bit better corner on the other side that they wouldn't just look that way. But Patrick Surtain is going to be defensive player of the year for me. And he's not playing at all pro level right now, but damn, he's still amazing.
The highest rated Denver Bronco right now has 223 defensive snaps is Jaquan McMillan on PFF. If I make the threshold 250 snaps, do you know who the highest rated Denver Broncos defender is on Pro Football Focus?
250 snaps. It's going to be
I mean, your obvious thought would be the same thing. It would be Pat Surtain, but it's not Pat Surtain.
no. Nick Benito?
It is Kareem Jackson.
Okay. All right. I mean,
Kareem Jackson
okay.
at 72.2 is the 22nd ranked safety. And the problem is that it's hard to pick a defensive MVP because things have been overall so poor. Baron Browning has a very good chance of finishing the season that way if he can stay healthy and continue on the level that he has come back on. I'll go in the middle. Right now, I'll go DJ Jones just because he's in there doing the dirty work. He was outmanned. We've said he's outmanned in there, taking on 2 and 3 blockers at a time because one of the guys next to him is brand new and is playing better. And Zach Allen, another step up in the trenches and on that defense. And the other side of him is a replacement level. I really don't want him taking snaps. God bless him, and Jonathan Harrison. But DJ Jones is in there doing yeoman's work in the middle of that line. So I'll go that direction.
All right. Well,
but again, there isn't anybody really worthy of, oh yeah, that's the guy. If we took him out, we'd be really bad. No, you've been really bad. That's the problem, Nick. And it is getting better. So looking right now, Baron Browning might be the MVP of the last 2 weeks. Zach Allen is in that conversation as well.
Yeah, they are starting to get a little bit better. I do think there's somebody that if you remove Scott, the whole thing goes to mush from an integrity perspective on the defense, but we'll get into that later from me. Comeback player of the year. We have Gatorade Gaming coming with a good one here. Russell Wilson's obviously playing better this season, but he's not playing at MVP level. He's playing middle of the pack, maybe, tier 3 level quarterback play, which is you can win when you have a good team around that. So he's definitely in the conversation, but it has to be Javonte Williams. I mean, unbelievable to see that he's even playing after tearing multiple ligaments in his knee this season. I mean, I guess we shouldn't even question medicine anymore because it sounds like Rodgers might even be back this season. What the hell with that Achilles that suffered week 1? But yeah, Javonte Williams, the comeback player for me. The fact that he had 30 plus touches in this last game. I mean, just gearing up, looking better and better. Without a doubt for me, Javonte Williams.
Yeah, and for me, he's the only one that's eligible. The idea that a comeback player of the year, and this isn't you, Gatorade Gaming. This is just in general. They have an award for that. It's most improved. That was where Russell Wilson would have gotten that award. A comeback player of the year means for me somebody that was out, that didn't play for one reason or another, whether it was personal or I wouldn't give it to a guy that was suspended, but but injury. So for me, Russell Wilson's not even eligible for that award because he's not coming back. He's improving over one year or the other. Comeback player of the year was out. Javonte Williams was out. That would absolutely be mine.
Yeah, he's been awesome this year. Curious to see what the Broncos do down the stretch. Over the last 3 weeks, Denver's been 8th in the NFL in EPA per rush, and they've been awesome running out of 12 and 21 personnel and heavy personnel. 5th EPA per rush out of 12 personnel, 3rd EPA per rush out of 21, and 1st in EPA per rush out of 12 heavy personnel. So 6 offensive linemen plus 2 tight ends. This is a team that's going to be playing, looks like, some condensed formations down the stretch here, which should be interesting. Kind of a return to origin here. And Broncos betting that teams not loading the box is something they're going to try to take advantage of. Now, can they create some more explosives out of those personnel packages? We'll see. That's the big one. Keith Brugman says Kareem Jackson is my comeback player of the year. He may come back from suspension numerous times. LOL, Keith. LOL. That's
funny.
Yeah.
That's funny. Let me see here. And actually, most improved from the beginning of the week, Kyle talking about Fabian Moreau. I think he was on when Fabian Moreau first hit the field, his first 3 snaps, he had 2 holding penalties. So he started low, super low, and is playing at a very good level this year. So, yeah, I didn't want to be a broken record with Fabian on there, but he's playing really well this year in the last few games that he's been in. Long may it continue. Mike asks a question: are we going to have most of our Broncos back off IR? I think for the most part, I don't know. Brandon Johnson's not done for this season, is he? Or is he? I don't
No, he
remember.
should be
But
back.
for the most part, the guys that you're hoping to get back, they're back.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Bradley Moss finally makes an appearance here.
He's off IR, so that's that's not
Yeah.
it. He's off IR. Baron Browning's off IR.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the guys that are on IR or out. Dulcich, he's out. Kareem Jackson is suspended. Brandon Johnson is a possibility. He went on IR week 8. Jalen Virgil, I think he's out. Palczewski, I think he's done. Kwan's done. Jonas Griffith is done. Caden Stearns is done, and Tim Patrick is done. Everybody else is coming back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, should be interesting to see who else could still, make an impact here. But you have some guys. It would be great to get Dulcich out there. But moving forward, Scott, most improved player. We had a comment earlier.
Dulcich is done because that's the second time he's been IR'd, isn't he?
I think you're allowed to come off multiple times.
I thought he was done for the year. I thought once you brought a guy, you couldn't do that, but I could be wrong. The technicality, they changed them all the time. It used to be if you were IR'd, you were done, period.
Yeah.
And then they've changed that around. But I'm not expecting when Dulcich got IR'd again, I thought he was finished. But I could absolutely be wrong on that. Probably am.
We'll see. They keep changing the rules on that. But most improved player so far this season, I'm going to have to go with Nick Benito on this one just because he looked like somebody who shouldn't even come close to sniffing the field last season. And now he is, they're doing a better job with his role. As soon as Browning was back, he was not demoted, but, found a more specific pass rush role. I love the quarterback spy stuff that we saw Vance Joseph utilize with Benito as kind of mirroring Mahomes in this last game. And he's been great. I was very critical of the pick when it happened at 64. But I am not here just to, ignore things that happen when it goes against my initial thought on that. Is Benito ever going to be a true, starting caliber player at the NFL level in like base packages? No, I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I don't think he has that body type. But as a sub package guy who can be utilized in different ways and get after the passer, yeah, I think he's somebody who can be a very good player for you down the stretch. And you need waves of guys in the NFL on the defensive line, and he can be a plus player in those waves. So Benito's been improved a lot. The sacks have diminished a bit. We kind of talked about some of those were a little fluky, but the pressures and the tape and the flashes are still there. Benito, hats off, buddy. Love pass rushers, and he's getting after it, and he's probably the team's second most physically gifted pass rusher.
Yeah, behind Baron Browning. So it's nice you can get those two guys in a 3rd and long on the field at the same time, and I'm not worried about the run game. If pin your ears back and go, and if they decide to run a draw around you, so be it. Someone should be able to catch them by the time they get 12 yards. I'm going to go with Lloyd Cushenberry. Lloyd Cushenberry, as Larry says, where's Cush ranked among centers? On PFF, he is ranked 12th. That's up from low 20s, which is where he's been his entire career. Lloyd Cushenberry has gone from a guy that we can't believe he is not getting replaced to, all right, are we talking a new contract for Lloyd Cushenberry for next year? And does he resign as a free agent? And hey, can we get a comp pick for him if he doesn't? And some of it isn't even just the physical thing. The last year he was, and I don't know if he was schemed up where people were head on him way more, but he was getting pushed back immediately. Run game, pass game. That's not happening as much. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, possibly, is the communication among the offensive line where he is coming off of his blocks to pick up somebody coming from the other side. He's recognizing stunts, all of those type of things where he is playing the game better and better and better. And he's become a guy that you can count on to not be a liability on the offensive line. Now that's damning with faint praise, I know, but he was horrendous last year. He was I don't know, is it Sieve? He was a turnstile in the middle of the line, and it just, you can't do anything on offense with guys coming right through. That's not happening anymore. And the Denver Broncos offense is much better for it. Lloyd Cushenberry, most improved.
He's been awesome. I really do want to give him a shout out as well, because you and I were both very critical of his play last year, and I'm guessing so was Lloyd and probably the offensive line coach. He looks better this season. Scott, even in the last couple weeks, he's started to look a little bit more mobile as well. Like I'm seeing plays where he's actually out in space and hitting blocks, which I didn't know was in his wheelhouse. Really.
But again, that's recognition. I'm like, I know it's in your wheelhouse to pick up a stunt. That's just recognition. That's awareness.
Yeah.
So is it your footwork? What is it to get out there? But yes, last week against Kansas City Chiefs, for the first time I saw him successful. And I know this sounds awful, but the first time I've seen him successfully get outside the hash marks for a screen pass.
Yeah.
That's a start, man. You couldn't run that play. How come, Scott? How come the Falcons or the Broncos are so bad at running screens? Because your linemen can't move. They can't get outside. Lloyd Cushenberry would show up just in time to help up the running back who had 3 defenders on him. That's changing. And if you can get more than one guy involved in the screen game for this offense, it's going to become a weapon for Sean Payton because he wants to use those plays. He was making adjustments. We saw it, and I don't remember which game it was, but the first play, it was a backside screen to Jaleel McLaughlin, and he had a single, Quinn Miners as his single blocker out in front of him. That was how he was starting to run screens instead of multiple guys. Usually you see 3 guys out in front of you on a screen. He was running backside, misdirection, single lineman screen plays. That's changing. He's adding to it because he wants the running backs to have the ball. And part of that is because of the improvement of the interior line, specifically Lloyd Cushenberry.
Yeah, they've been great. And also we got D Porter coming in being great to us, saying good morning, Mile High Huddlers. Good morning to you, D Porter. Says have a great election day, everyone. Yep, as soon as this show's over, I'm going to go drop the ballots off of the ballot box. So make sure you get out there and do that. A lot of school board stuff on the ballot this year for me. But hey, maybe I'm going to be in those Seattle public schools here pretty soon. Good to see you, D Porter. Appreciate you coming in here. Scott, going forward here, we got a few more. We had most improved player.
Real quick on this while we're still talking about Lloyd. Todd says PFF ranking Cush 12th. I'm seeing 19th. You may have ignore snap minimums. That may be the difference on there. So it could be guys that have just a few snaps. I have mine ticked on. So it includes basically starters, and it's got 12th between David Andrews of the Patriots and Andre James of the Las Vegas Raiders. 9th, Creed Humphreys. Number 1, believe it or not, guess who the number 1 ranked center is by PFF? Because they love this dude.
My guy.
Drew Dahlman.
Drew Dahlman.
Atlanta Falcons is the number 1 ranked center. Shoot, Falcons fans are trying to replace him. Drew Dahlman, let's bring this back to the Broncos, was the player that the Atlanta Falcons drafted with the 4th round pick that they got when the Broncos traded up to get Javonte Williams.
Yeah.
And he's now the number 1 ranked center. A lot of that has to do, if I sort that by pass blocking, he ain't going to be number 1 anymore. But run blocking, he's ranked pretty high.
Yeah, and just bringing it back to Cushenberry, we're going to have a tough conversation this offseason because people are going to, you're going to let him walk as soon as he is good or finally contributing. Well, you're already paying Garrett Bowles, who we'll wait and see on that one. You're paying Ben Powers and McGlinchey next season. And then you have Miners, who only has 1 year left of cost control. It's probably going to come down to pick one. Who would you rather keep, Cushenberry or Miners? Because I don't think it's going to happen where you can pay.
I don't think it's going to be a financial decision for him. Cushenberry's not going to get so much money from someone else that you can't keep him. I don't think so.
You're probably right, but the margins for Denver and the cap are so small.
You can figure out a way to come up with an extra $3 or $4 million. If he goes from 2 to 6, that's about as much as I think he'll get.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting. Most disappointing player for the Broncos so far this season. So a little bit negative on this one, but somebody who's been disappointing for the Broncos. For me, I'm going to I'll take one here that I think is a little bit easy, and that for me is Damari Mathis. Early in the season was horrific. He's been benched now. You were really hoping the flashes you saw from last year, him being a very early 4th round pick. Hey, maybe we have a cost controlled cornerback too, somebody who can, really provide something opposite from Patrick Surtain, and he's been dreadful this season. So I'm going to have to go with Mathis. I know that there's other options out there who have also been disappointing, but he's the one who I thought at least we needed to spend a second on being disappointing because that cornerback spot's very important. And the fact that you're getting benched for Fabian Moreau, who's been okay, but still Fabian Moreau, not great. So he's been disappointing.
This list is long and distinguished for disappointing Broncos, unfortunately. My number 1 coming in is already gone. If I look at the roster for 2023, the answer for me is Randy Gregory.
Mm-hmm.
He was just horrendous and so bad that he got shipped out despite the fact that you're paying him a ton of money. That's how bad he was playing, let alone whatever else was going on behind the scenes. Mike McGlinchey is out there for me for most disappointing ad. He's getting paid top 5 money and he's playing not even really on an average level right now. I'd like to see more from Drew Sanders. Whether you can say, is he most disappointing? No. But, with that type of athleticism, I think a lot of us had hopes that he was going to come in and be an impact on defense. Those are the main ones. And I think Kyle comes in for me, Greg Dulcich. He says it couldn't have been more depressing than your only tight end always being hurt. So that's disappointing. And Mike says Jerry Jeudy. My expectations weren't through the roof for Jerry Jeudy. If he finishes the season in, the 800-900 yard range, which he still can, I think that's okay. It's about where we were on him. But Dulcich is going to be way down from where you were expecting. Randy Gregory has been a complete and total utter failure. And Mike McGlinchey has not been what you paid for.
Yeah.
Zach Allen could have been there, but not anymore. I think Zach Allen's becoming the guy that you bought, and he's going to be a big part of this defense moving forward.
Yeah, without a doubt. So he's been definitely disappointing. And Scott, final one I want to get into here. MVP so far this season for the Broncos.
We already did this.
No, we didn't do MVP. Saved it last. So it's the last one here.
I thought you had Sutton and I took Miners, or was that just offense?
That was just Offensive Player of the Year. And then we did Defensive Player of the Year. Have not done MVP yet. My MVP is going to be Justin Simmons. I think what the defense looked like without him, I don't care what the PFF grade says. I look at the numbers and I look at the turnover differential. Nobody takes the ball away like him. And the defense looked like a damn chicken with its head cut off without him out there versus not just the Miami game, but against the Bears game too. I mean, God, they were terrible against the Bears on defense. They've looked like they've stabilized some. And I think that there's something to be said about also the locker room aspect with Simmons being retained, just being out there. Probably on the surface, if you're looking at actual win value added, if your quarterback's even playing average level, it's probably always going to be the quarterback just because of the actual value provided. But I don't think Wilson has played well enough overall for me to give him the shout out here. So I'm going to have to go with Justin Simmons. I think his value it's hard to even quantify. It's almost like a catcher in baseball. It's like Yadier Molina's WAR is never that high, but like, okay, I don't give a crap what your WAR says, what his impact is because of his ability to call games and whatnot. So yeah, I'm going to go with Simmons.
And I'm okay with that. Hello, Mr. Kendall.
Dad.
Appreciate you coming in. Thank you for the support.
Appreciate you.
Looking forward to meeting you one day. Thank you so much. You want to say hello, Nick? Come on, be polite.
Hey, Dad. Appreciate you. Love you. I hope you're doing well. Happy belated birthday. It was just his birthday a few days ago. So
happy birthday. Happy birthday. Yeah. No, I'm okay with Simmons. And I think at the very top, I don't remember who it was, but a callback to a good comment. Whoever did the most to keep this team together and playing hard should get a shout out for this. And, my initial reaction was Sean Payton, but you can't do it without the locker room. You can't do it without the players. And one of the reasons Justin Simmons is still here rather than traded and try and get some money back off that contract is because he's still worth more to you out there as you're trying to finish the season strong, playoffs or not playoffs, than you would have gotten in a trade. So I really liked what I saw from the Denver Broncos from a heart perspective, a bounce back and a comeback. And whether it was against the Chicago Bears, whether it was against the Green Bay Packers, going up against the Kansas City Chiefs again, I've liked what I've seen with the fight in this team. And a lot of that has to do with the veteran leadership out there. So if you say who's the big veteran leader on this team, it's probably got to be Justin Simmons there. And then on the other side, it might be Courtland Sutton. Because I think Russell Wilson, you say, okay, well, Russell Wilson is always super positive. Yeah, but it's almost, there is no off switch for him. So you just tune him out. Yeah. It's always, yay, guys, we're awesome. Everything is awesome. That you tune him out a little bit, where I think Simmons and a guy like Sutton, who's been there a little longer, is probably a little more real.
Yeah.
And impactful.
I agree with you. And have some comments coming in here. Jules underrated. Jeremy said, I think Josie's as valuable as Simmons getting the team together. The thing is, Simmons takes the ball away at an incredible rate, and the impact you get in turnover. It's hard to take the ball away in the NFL, and turnovers are also volatile. They are very unpredictable week to week, year to year. Simmons just takes the goddamn ball away, and it's unbelievable. So there's value to that.
Underrated since I've been covering the Broncos. I said that week one I'm like, wait a minute. I thought this was the guy was described as a plugger who you're trying to place, and I'm watching Jewel And I'm like, this guy goes sideline to sideline pretty good. He's a pretty damn good linebacker.
Okay, Scott, you're going to make me do it. I had two more categories here. We're just going to cheat on this one. Most underrated player. I think we're both on the same page here. I was going to say I had it most overrated and most underrated listed as a category. I was going to have Jewel as most underrated just because he does have limitations, Scott. I feel like more so in the size department than the athleticism department. But if you have him isolated against a wide receiver, running back in space and man coverage, guess what? He's going to look like a lot of linebackers out there. But as far as what he brings from the ability to make the play that's in front of him and be in the right spot, he's just steady Eddie. So I think there's a discrepancy. You're not going to get a lot of splash plays from Josie Jewell, but you're not going to see a lot of negative highlights as well. And there's a lot of value to that when you're talking about playing team defense through the spine of the defense. So Jewell is super underrated. Wanted to give him a shout out.
Golly, I mean, I just have a hard time picking MVPs and underrated and stuff for a team that's 32nd, right now. I think they've moved up to like 30th in scoring.
Yeah.
It just hasn't been the whole has not been good on this.
Jaquan McMillan
it's
also
a little easier
deserved
for me.
a shout out.
It's a little easier for me for Keith to say worst value versus worst contract. So the worst value right now on offense is not Russell Wilson. That might be next year. It's Mike McGlinchey right now. Because Sutton's highly paid, but he's about where he's. If I look at his yards, I look at his touchdowns, and I look at contracts, it lines up nicely.
Mm-hmm.
If I look at Mike McGlinchey, it does not. He's one of the highest paid right tackles in the league. On the defensive side of the ball, $18 million for Justin Simmons. We just got done praising him. He's not playing on that next year. That will tell, for me, we'll see what he's being paid next year will be better in line with what his value is this year. Because it ain't $18 million.
Probably not. Did want to give a shout out as well for the underrated aspect. I think Garrett Bowles has been playing very good football here this season overall. Again, just we have not heard his name much, and that's a good thing from your left tackle, especially when the right tackle is struggling as much as they are. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Jaquan McMillan, who has been a revelation for the Broncos at that slot spot. Is that the right word? Revelation.
There you go.
I mean, I've been relevated for sure by him, whatever the heck that means. But he's been awesome out there. It's small sample size, but you may be found one of your starting defensive backs next season and the rest of the season, which is great, great value. So that's awesome. Those guys are all underrated and excited to see what they can do going forward. Overrated for the Broncos here, Scott. I think just based on this is going to be a cheating one, really, but I think people are so excited for new and different at safety that the talk surrounding PJ Locke and the film, even though it's a small sample size, is like, man, we are not watching the same game here because PJ Locke was probably the worst defender on the field in that Chiefs game. And I know that big pick versus the Packers, man, he looks over his skis. And maybe also it's had overrated since PFF hasn't graded so high, but Kareem Jackson limited as well. I don't know if I would have him as high as they talk about him. So those two safeties are still got some work to do.
I want to help our friend here if I can find him on this. If I list 100, depending on where I look. But, Todd says Alex Singleton is ranked, sorry, on this one. Well, we love this one too. John Juno says, love you guys. Y'all keep me staying with the constant Bronco talk. Alex Singleton is ranked 4th by PFF at linebacker. Maybe last year. This year, they've got him ranked, and I think this is actually a little unfair. He's ranked 70th, 70 out of 80. So, Todd, I'm not sure where you're looking at the PFF stuff, but he was ranked really high last year. This year, it's 70th, and I don't think he's that bad. I think he's been okay, done a job, but I don't think it's certainly not 4th. But I don't think 70th. 70th is what it actually is. But I don't think he's been playing that bad where he's one of the worst guys on the field in the entire NFL.
I agree with you on that one. I'm looking for him here, Alex Singleton. You
have to go to page 2 when you flip it to linebackers.
I flipped it. I have 200.
He's 71 on the main list and 70 if you look at his on his profile page on the Denver Broncos list. It says 70, and then if I click on the list, it's 71, which is pretty atrocious.
That is not great. I just checked out Unfortunately, Scott, I did it out of 125 minimum snaps at linebacker just to see where he was at, and he came out about 76. Do you know who's dead last in defensive grade from PFF out of 89 linebackers who qualify?
With 100, has Drew Sanders gotten that many snaps?
Drew Sanders has 126 snaps, and he is the worst ranked defensive player at linebacker in the entire NFL so far this season. Number 2, a guy that we talked about a good bit in here, the next worst linebacker in football, according to PFF, Chad Muma, who has struggled a lot since joining the league. So we'll see. But Sanders has a ways to go. I'm very happy that Jewel and Singleton have been relatively healthy because Sanders doesn't look like he's there yet mentally. But Scott, we ran long. We had a lot of fun things to talk about today. You guys are killing it. Appreciate all the stars coming in. We also had Gary Palmer. Brad was in the house. Michael Ronquillo came in twice. Troy Boer. Richard coming in from across the pond. D. Porter and the old man, Darren Kendall. Appreciate you. Happy belated birthday again, Dad. Any final thoughts before I send it on home, Scott?
No, I'm looking forward to some football again. It feels like we're slowing down again. It almost feels like July. Ready for some football, though. We'll be back on Tuesday. Nick, you'll be here tonight, I would imagine, with building the Broncos, and then we'll be back on Thursday, and you can check out Mile High Insiders on Wednesday. So lots of Broncos coverage all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott is at Scott Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell MHH. Also follow us at BFB_pod, as well as at Mile High Huddle. If you haven't done so yet, join us at Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle pod. And as that ticker says there underneath, if you are joining us on YouTube today, please subscribe to the show, like the show, and share on your social media platforms. I will be live again tonight. There we go.
There it is.
Muma.
There he is.
You know, and he might be graded low for the Jags, but the Jags have been one of the better defenses in the NFL so far this season.
They put a ton of resources and money into that linebacker core.
Yeah.
And no matter who it was going to be, someone was going to rise to the top. Foye Oluokun is playing out of his mind.
He's been awesome.
He's been playing terrific over there.
Yep. Yeah, very, very fun to see him playing well, and fun to see that Jags team this season playing good football. Sometimes the tank works, Scott, but guys, we're going to get out of here.
Hey, I'm all for tanking, man. They're going to reward you for losing. Guess what? Lose.
Yeah.
He said he was tanking. Yeah. What do you expect?
Yeah, how's that?
Golly, it's basic psychology, for God's sakes. If I'm going to reward you for losing, what do I expect you to do?
Yeah, and that might be a fun off-season conversation, right? Teams that approached tanking from a front office perspective, not in the locker room, because I don't think you can do that.
No, you can't. Those guys have jobs to do. Their job is to go out there and put forth their best effort. But from a front office perspective, you know what? And guys with longer contracts, listen, my hamstring's a little sore. I think I'm going to sit this one out. But from a front office perspective, when I'm a seller at the trade deadline, guess what that means? I'm tanking.
Yeah.
I've already given up on this season. I'm stocking up for next season.
Yeah. And 4 of the more obvious tank teams recently, Scott, that come to mind. Now, maybe this is some selection bias because I'm only remembering the positive ones, but the Jags definitely were tanking that year with Trevor Lawrence. They look like they're pretty good. The Dolphins, the tank for Tua. I mean, everybody knew that, and they end up getting 3, but still taking a shot at the quarterback. They look pretty good. The Detroit Lions definitely tore down, and now we're very good. And then how about the Houston Texans? God damn, that's a team that last season everybody's like, oh, they're tanking for the top quarterback. They win their last game because locker room, not tanking, but front office perspective was tear down, tank, rebuild. And now they hit on a quarterback. I mean,
and their coach, it looks like.
And D'Amico Ryans.
May even be more. I mean, well, no, not if you're playing at the level that CJ Stroud is, your coach independent.
Yes.
But D'Amico Ryans he's been a good hire so far.
Yeah. So just kind of fun. Just interesting to talk about and see. But guys, we appreciate you. Make sure you get out there and vote. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you again tonight. Until then, continue to choose compassion and kindness. Go Broncos.